Hello there, welcome to the Firewatch audio tour. My name is Rich Summer. I voiced the character of Henry, the guy that you're currently controlling with those buttons there. And I'll be chatting with you in a little bit. Thanks for checking it out.
Hi, I'm Sean Vanneman. I wrote the bulk of 100% of this game.
Hey, I'm Jake Rodkin. I did a lot of level design, UI design, and worked with everyone on the story for Firewatch.
The game has this weird structure that Chris and I talk about in another tape. This is the first thing I wrote, was this opening of the game that jumps between Henry's life and the trip out to the woods. And I used a little product called Twine to do that, which you can download and use. It's just a very simple choose your own adventure tool. The simplest way to program a video game that one can then share with friends and play.
I think we were worried that the team would sort of perceive Henry as a blank slate, as sort of a generic game player protagonist, and we wanted to make sure, or we wanted to get in everyone's mindset, you're playing as a specific guy with a specific life.
Yeah, there's a reason when you play video games that a lot of your protagonists have amnesia, because it's really difficult when you're driving a character around who knows things about their life, or his or her life, that you, who you ostensibly are that person, don't know. So yeah, we kept trying to write an opening of the game that happened sort of like weeks into Henry's experience, and then quickly realized that it was like, well, why would he not be able to say X? Well, because his relationship with his wife is Y. So, but the player doesn't know that. Yeah. And this was the quickest way to get everybody on board, was to just take the thing that I wrote that answered the question, I think, for Jane and you at the beginning, which was like, who is Henry? And I would write these character profiles that were really bad. And then I went, what if I just let you play a thing? And then you can figure out who he is. And we held on to that until we had the idea to put into the game.
It means that when you're playing Firewatch and Henry and Delilah start talking about Henry's wife, you don't have to learn it through his dialogue, because you made the choices that brought him where he is today.
Hi, I'm Sean Vanneman. I wrote the bulk of 100% of this game.
Hey, I'm Jake Rodkin. I did a lot of level design, UI design, and worked with everyone on the story for Firewatch.
The game has this weird structure that Chris and I talk about in another tape. This is the first thing I wrote, was this opening of the game that jumps between Henry's life and the trip out to the woods. And I used a little product called Twine to do that, which you can download and use. It's just a very simple choose your own adventure tool. The simplest way to program a video game that one can then share with friends and play.
I think we were worried that the team would sort of perceive Henry as a blank slate, as sort of a generic game player protagonist, and we wanted to make sure, or we wanted to get in everyone's mindset, you're playing as a specific guy with a specific life.
Yeah, there's a reason when you play video games that a lot of your protagonists have amnesia, because it's really difficult when you're driving a character around who knows things about their life, or his or her life, that you, who you ostensibly are that person, don't know. So, yeah, we kept trying to write an opening of the game that happened sort of like weeks into Henry's experience, and then quickly realized that it was like, well, why would he not be able to say X? Well, because his relationship with his wife is Y. So, but the player doesn't know that. Yeah. And this was the quickest way to get everybody on board, was to just take the thing that I wrote that answered the question, I think, for Jane and you at the beginning, which was like, who is Henry? And I would write these character profiles that were really bad. And then I went, what if I just let you play a thing? And then you can figure out who he is. And we held on to that until we had the idea to put into the game.
It means that when you're playing Firewatch and Henry and Delilah start talking about Henry's wife, you don't have to learn it through his dialogue, because you made the choices that brought him where he is today. Hi, it's Jake again.
Hey, I'm Chris Remo.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Hi there. I was a game designer and the music composer on Firewatch.
Nice.
So you're hearing now the first piece of interactive music that went into Firewatch. The first piece of music that actually
responds to what you're doing in the game?
Exactly, yeah. So this is a piece of music that's divided into technically 6 parts. And what's happening is, as you're playing through this introductory sequence, when you hit certain points in the narrative, it sends a signal to Wise, which is the name of the audio middleware we're using. And then when Wise gets that signal, it waits until the next sort of musically appropriate transition point. And then when it hits that, it smoothly transitions into the next section of music. And so it creates the effect that you're just listening to one big long piece of music that just happens to be timed very nicely to your playthrough.
It just happens to get sadder and sadder at the exact rate that your life gets sadder and sadder.
Yeah, exactly. This was a challenging process, both because I had no idea what the music should sound like, and also because it was the first interactive piece of music in the game. So the technical sort of just how does this work was also a part of it. But as it turned out, this music was changed. I mean, Jake, you may remember this. This music changed relatively little over the course of development in comparison to a lot of.
I think it started off as maybe 3 pieces, and it expanded out to 5 over development. But other than that, it's one of the first things dropped in, shipped. Get ready to hear about that a lot on this commentary.
I'm Nels Anderson, and I was a designer and gameplay programmer on Firewatch.
I am Jane Ng, and I worked on the 3D environment art in Firewatch.
So you're likely standing at the base of your home away from home, your home in the wilderness. For all intents and purposes, more or less, this is basically just a real straight-up tower like they existed out in the woods, right?
Yeah, I think it is Portland. There's somebody in Portland who was very good about archiving a lot of blueprints about various type of fire lookouts of the state, and we got some, and that's how we started off building the the lookout tower, just by looking through how they were actually built.
It's slightly taller than a real one, right?
We had to make quite a bit of adjustments because, for example, the stairway you see here, normally fire lookout stairways are not on the outside, but for more interesting gameplay and views for the player, we opted to change that. But ultimately we still wanted the tower to feel like a real tower, so we had to figure stuff like, hey, how does the plumbing actually work? How do they get water? Stuff like that. It actually is very important for a real tower.
And if you go look around the base of the tower, you will actually see a big old plastic cistern.
We are not a survival game of any sort, but it is important to make sure that all that stuff is actually thought out, so the space feels realistic.
Right. You don't want someone playing the game being like, wait a minute, there's no how does this guy drink? How is he not dead?
When I normally play video games, I'm always interested in stuff like, hey, where's the bathroom? So here we have the outhouse and you can go anywhere, but stuff like water is very important. So in a real fire lookout situation, what they do is they will use a cistern, and they will capture rainwater from the roof, and you will actually see that we actually have a little pipe down from the roof, and we even have what they call a first flush filter being there, which is actually what they use.
That's my favorite kind of filter, really.
Yeah, I had to look up what do they do, because once you go, okay, you collect rainwater from the roof, it won't be all nasty, and then hey, somebody already figured that out on how to collect rainwater. What do you know?
We actually visited a number of different lookout towers as we were researching the game, and it was always very satisfying to see elements of things we saw in the real world and make their way back into the game, and vice versa.
So we also made sure to have a tab here, like a little faucet, where you can actually get water from the cistern.
Yeah, if you click on it, it will play an animation of a hand gripping a knob and water comes out for 2 seconds. Doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But it's there.
I think for a while we actually were thinking should we just let the player turn on the water? Or then what happens if the water just runs out? And then James had a very good idea of just going just make one animation that you turn on the faucet and turn it off immediately, just so that hey, there's water in here and you won't die. That's Henry.
Hey, it's Chris again.
Oh, it's Jake.
So if you're listening to this right now, it's because you went off the beaten path really early in the game. Obviously, you probably did that because the commentary map told you to. But
you don't need a map to tell you to go here. You could just go here.
We had to. One of the biggest challenges in this game was throughout the entire narrative, keeping in mind that really players can pretty much go anywhere that they've unlocked on the map at any time. And sometimes that's actually really inconvenient for the narrative of the game. We had to come up with a lot of excuses for why you couldn't go to certain places at certain times, or if we couldn't think of an excuse.
Some call it an excuse, others call it a thrilling narrative event.
Right. So, for instance, where you are right now, if you keep walking in that direction, you will sort of cross the river, but then be unable to go any further. Because,
There's like a lot of dense underbrush.
and then about halfway through the game, when a big fire happens, that area is burned out, and you can walk past it into Cottonwood Creek and
Pork Pond,
Pork
etc.
Pond and all those areas. Yeah, it was really, really hard to think of justifications like that weren't completely implausible.
Yep.
And so we actually have relatively few cases of that in the game.
Yeah, if we couldn't come up with a good way to keep a player out of a space, we instead flipped the other direction and went, well, what can we do to support it and make it interesting? On this day, before the story started, not a whole lot, but we thought it was fun to point out that you can wander a lot more of the map than you might even think at the very, very, very start of the game.
Yep, and then especially once you get ropes, that increases a lot more. So just as you get these items that allow you to explore more of the world, we had to face these increasingly complicated and frustrating design challenges of how does the whole game not break all the time now. It was interesting and difficult, but also cool.
Yep, bye.
Hello, Two Forks Tower. Two Forks Tower, this is Thoroughfare Tower. Come in.
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
Yeah, that's what the guy said on the phone.
So, what's wrong with you?
Excuse me?
People take this job to get away from something. So, what's wrong?
What's wrong with you?
That's a great idea. Go ahead.
Look, I just hiked for 2 days, so I don't really follow whatever it is you're doing right now.
You take a stab at what's wrong with me.
Fine, then can I sleep forever?
Sure, buddy. Okay, now go ahead.
Okay, you're probably just rebelling against a mom who wishes you had given her grandkids, by the sound of your voice, at least 15 years ago. You come out here and it really grinds her gears and you love it. Can I sleep now?
Well, she also says I fuck immature men, but in my defense, who wouldn't want a 28-year-old with ambition and energy and some fire in his belly in bed?
Me, I'm going now.
Just a second, now it's my turn.
Okay, good night, bye.
Let's see. I don't know anything about you, but 9 times out of 10, folks out here simply got dumped.
Huh, is that it?
Close?
Good night.
Good night. Welcome to the job. Morning, Henry. Well, I guess good afternoon. You probably slept like a rock. Anyway, there's still a few hours of daylight to get some work in. I can see you at your desk, so call me when you're ready.
Hey, sorry. Guess I slept in.
You got a relaxing, 14 hours of sleep? Whew.
Yeah, Jesus. I guess it's 6?
6:45.
Whoops.
Don't worry about it. That hike puts everyone out of commission for a day or two. But now that you're up, let me quickly get you acquainted with the job. There's a thing in the middle of your room with a round map on it. Do you see it?
Nels, it feels like you on the team did the most sort of digging about what the real job is like, what is in the actual space, and then checked us against reality when we kind of went off the reservation.
In general, I really like doing research. That's sort of a thing I've enjoyed on all the projects I've worked on. So for this, a bunch of folks on the team read this great book called Fire Season by Philip Connors, which is kind of like a memoir-ish thing from this dude who still is an active fire lookout even today. But I also just, I called up the Ministry of Forests and Natural Resources here in British Columbia and got redirected to like 3 increasingly small Ministry of Forest offices until someone just gave me literally the phone number of this cool old lady who had once been a fire lookout. So I just kind of chatted with her for like an hour and a half just about what doing the job was like. The reason why the game is not a simulation of being a fire lookout is because what everyone talks about is that the number one challenge with the job is that it is incredibly, impossibly boring.
Because you can't, like, read a book. You can't, like, be doing other things, right? Like,
Not really.
Yeah.
At the end of day 3, where Delilah mentions, it's like, Kenny's like, well, what do I do for the rest of the summer? She's like, you sit in that chair and you look out the window. That is actually what fire lookouts really do. So all the folks I talked to said, like, figuring out ways to combat boredom is the number one thing. The lady I talked to, she said she did a whole lot of needlepoint and cross stitch because you can do that without looking at your hands very much. Obviously, like, lookouts are also responsible for doing, maintenance on their towers. But again, it's like not maintenance because some crazy Yahoo smashed up your tower. It's maintenance like, oh, the paint is kind of flaking off, better paint it. Or these trees have grown too tall, so I need to chop them down. Not, I'm chopping down trees to form a weird log bridge.
The main takeaway from whenever we would talk to someone who had done this job is, why would you make a game about that? That is the most boring time of my entire life. So hopefully we showed them how.
It feels like people who do this job like fall into 2 camps, right? They're the people who think they can do it and can't hack it and bail after like a month or 2. People like Jack Kerouac, who tried to do this and wrote about it in Desolation Angels, and then he went crazy from a lack of cigarettes and then left. Or the people who kind of enjoy the solitude and then figure out ways to deal with it. But, we do have, like, a lot of the window dressing for the stuff people use. Like, other folks I talk to, it's like, what do you do? Well, we read a lot of books. And we, like, trade the books between the different lookouts through rangers and stuff like that. So, of course, Firewatch has a crap ton of weird books in it. Stuff like that.
Hey, I can see your tower.
Yep, that's me. Bye.
Hey, there's a map in my tower that I'm pretty sure is not USGS regulation, unless I've unknowingly been assigned to work in 2 orcs, and the lake to the east is made of acid.
That sounds erroneous.
Looks like the previous resident was into fantasy.
Hey, it's Jake again.
And it's Jane again.
All right, let's talk about Two Forks Lookout. I mean, we could just talk about lookout towers in general in
Yes.
video games. Well, you built it. You want to talk about it?
Yes. So lookout towers have standard sizes, actually. I think most of these were either 14 feet by 14 feet in the inside, or something like 7. Like there's actually
Like
a
tiny.
standard.
Wow.
Yeah, the cabins have standard sizes, and the ones that you have a bed and stay in are the 14 feet ones. And we realized through a few experiments that if you make a space that's actually 14 feet in the game, it would be too tiny.
Yeah, I remember you found a lookout tower enthusiast website that had posted the actual blueprints that the State Parks and Forest
Yes.
Service used. So we're like, we're doing
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
We're building it to scale.
Yes.
It's
and-
tiny. You can't
yeah,
move around.
It's tiny, and then basically the camera just has no room to maneuver at all.
Yeah, and you just feel like a fat guy, like you can't fit
Yeah.
between your desk and the
Yeah, and
firefighter.
it feels like you're just in a shoebox. So we did a few experiments. I was like, okay, how about it's twice as big? And when it's twice as big, and it's just like no.
palatial
Yeah, and
fire
it looks
lookout
wrong.
cribs.
And then like on the outside, the silhouette of the space also looks wrong. So we ended up with I think something like 1.5 size bigger than real life, and it feels like a real fire lookout.
Over the course of the game, as things change, there's a bunch of variants of the tower too, right? I mean, simple stuff like the broken window, but then also we
yes.
move furniture around. Henry gets moved in over the time.
Yeah, there
over
are different
time.
states of the interior, and we achieved that by actually swapping out the whole interior set. Like 7 or 8 times, I think.
A lot of times.
As the game moves on, then more and more of his stuff starts showing up, and then Henry is a slob, and so his like undies are everywhere and all
Window
this
gets
stuff.
broken, window gets fixed,
Exactly.
conspiracy board goes up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And dirty socks get all over the place. Just tell the story of some slobby dude up here.
Exactly.
So this generator is all the power I've got out here.
Yep, it doesn't go through much gas, and, well, you don't have much in the way of electronics, so...
What about my hairdryer?
Oh, I'm sorry. You might just have to make peace with frizzy locks.
I could never. So it's just the outhouse then, in terms of going to the bathroom?
You're a man, Henry. You can go wherever you want. Well, number 1 at least. And, full disclosure, I pee wherever I want as well.
Chris again here.
Hey, and Jake, congratulations, player. You have completed the teen loop.
Oh man, that's true. This is the end of what was originally called teenloop.unity, a scene file in our game engine Unity, because we thought that was just going to be the file corresponding to the
To
first
this piece
sort
of game that you've just played.
Yeah, this first big objective.
But then we kept building, so all of Firewatch is in fact saved inside of a file called teenloop.unity. So
Yep, the
know that
entire
for the
game.
rest of your play experience, you are inside of the teen loop.
Yeah. This part of the game, you probably are right now if you're listening to these commentary notes basically in sequence. The music is either about to kick in or has just kicked in. It's dark. You're finding your tower's been broken into. This, I really strongly remember feeling when this went into the game and had the music, which was actually the first music implemented in the entire game. All this stuff together felt to me like the first real moment of assertive tension in the game, and it felt really crazy.
Yeah, because we had our environment system working for the first time, so the sky turned to nighttime,
Yep.
and our world logic allowed the tower to switch into its broken into state just when you were off in the world for the first time. And then when that music finally came in, we're like, oh, wow, okay, this is a world that's alive and can be tense and cinematic.
Yep.
And all of it happened without us ever having to cut the camera. I remember we were all very proud and stoked of that.
For sure.
That was like right before we first demoed the game, I think, at the Penny Arcade Expo.
Yeah, because the end of day one was the end of the first demo.
Yeah.
Right before this, there's the moment with the creepy guy in the woods, and that was sort of a moment of tension. But that's also arguably maybe not, because it's immediately deflated by Delilah.
Right, but this you're like,
was like,
holy crap.
Okay, I remember feeling kind of nervous about it because it was like the game is declaring this is a tense moment, and if it falls flat, we have failed. We can't like make a joke to diffuse it. And I think it basically worked, and it was a real relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ba, 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 ba.